I would appraise this book actually at about $40,000.
Rebecca Romney looked like the perfect choice for a rare book expert on Pawn Stars. Calm, sharp, and completely trusted by Rick Harrison. But in 2014, everything shifted. A stolen volume worth $40,000 unexpectedly showed up on the show. Soon after, the FBI got involved, questioning how such an item ended up on national television. Rebecca herself faced scrutiny, and by January 2015, she was gone. No farewell episode, no official statement, just silence. Today, we dive into the hidden story behind her disappearance and why the truth was buried for so long. Rebecca Romney from Pawn Stars.
That was a great idea. It's George Wharton Edwards.
Rebecca was born on April 6, 1985, in Phoenix, Arizona. Growing up in the desert, nothing suggested she'd one day handle priceless manuscripts. In fact, she once joked that antique books were nothing more than dusty relics for old men. Her early dream was to be a philosopher or maybe a translator. She adored languages, big questions, and thoughtful conversations, things that had little to do with the high-stakes auction world that later defined her career. At 18, she entered college imagining a quiet life surrounded by books and lectures. By 22, she had mastered more than 5 languages: English, French, Japanese, Latin, ancient Greek, plus some Old English she taught herself by studying 12 hours a day. Once, she even translated a Greek papyrus from 300 BC for an exam and passed with top marks. Professors were stunned. These skills would later allow her to detect clever forgeries that might have cost collectors millions. Between 2003 and 2007, she studied philosophy and classical studies at Brigham Young University. While her classmates picked practical majors, Rebecca was busy debating free will in long seminars and translating classical texts in their original form. She overloaded her schedule, graduated with honors, and kept a perfect GPA. Her senior thesis compared 2nd century Greek fragments of Plato's Republic. No one realized it at the time, but this unusual blend of philosophy and ancient language prepared her for a future in a completely different world. In 2007, just after graduation, she made an unexpected decision. She applied for what she thought was a simple management role at Bauman Rare Books in Philadelphia. But when she arrived, she learned the posting was actually for a rare book specialist, something she had no training in. She nearly walked out, but instead admitted her inexperience. Her linguistic talents impressed the interviewers, and she got the job. Within months, Rebecca was handling treasures more valuable than entire houses: Shakespeare folios, pages of the Gutenberg Bible, first editions of Newton's Principia Mathematica. Any mistake could have meant financial disaster. By 2010, just 3 years later, she became gallery manager in Las Vegas at age 26. By 29, she was the youngest senior director in company history, overseeing auctions and private sales worth over $10 million annually. Some clients spent hundreds of thousands on single purchases, and Rebecca earned a reputation for spotting fakes that fooled almost everyone else. Rick Harrison didn't meet her through a casting call. Their connection went back years. When Bauman Rare Books opened a Las Vegas branch in 2007, Rebecca joined the staff. By 2010, she was managing it. Rick, who had been running gold and silver pawn since 1989, often crossed paths with people in the rare book scene. Through events and mutual contacts, he got to know Rebecca. So when Pawn Stars needed someone who truly understood manuscripts and historic documents, Rick personally called her, not the producers. That phone call led to her first TV appearance in 2011. She wasn't just a guest. She was already someone Rick trusted off camera. Their friendship grew, even extending to double dates, though fans never knew how close they actually were. Her debut on screen came in Season 4, April 4th, 2011. She was handed Civil War-era papers, including a Confederate bond from 1861, supposedly worth $5,000. Rebecca carefully examined the texture, ink, and printing method. In less than 10 minutes, she spotted a forged signature that dropped the value dramatically. Viewers loved her precise, confident approach. That single episode earned her the nickname the Book Lady, and ratings spiked by 15%. From then on, anything made of paper, letters, books, historic contracts, was her domain. Between 2011 and 2020, she appeared in about 30 episodes, most actively during the first 4 years. She authenticated everything from a replica Columbus letter to a $15,000 broadside of the Declaration of Independence. In 2013, she shocked fans by uncovering authentic Edgar Allan Poe notes hidden inside a manuscript thought to be worthless. She even appraised grim items like slave trade documents, balancing their painful history with their monetary value. By 2014, nearly 3/4 of the shop's paper-related cases went directly to her. Her style made her different. While other experts were dramatic, Rebecca delivered the facts with calm authority. She could reveal that a $50,000 book was part of an old forgery scheme without raising her voice. That steady composure became her signature. One episode nearly cost Chumley his job. He bought a signed copy of Charles Lindbergh's 1927 autobiography, We, for $500, but mistakenly called him Mark Lindbergh. Everyone thought it was fake. Rick warned that if the signature didn't check out, Chumley's career at the shop could be over. Rebecca stepped in, compared the autograph with verified examples, and explained how Lindbergh's handwriting changed over time. It turned out to be genuine, worth about $1,500. Not only was it a profit, but it also saved Chumley from being fired. Another time, rare-looking bonds came through the door. The seller claimed they were Revolutionary War relics. Rebecca studied them and revealed they were actually Confederate bonds tied to missing Southern assets lost in 1865 aboard the USS Republic, a ship that sank in a hurricane. Some of its cargo had been recovered in 2003. These papers could have been worth $50,000, but were tied up with legal risks. Thanks to her, the shop avoided a potentially dangerous purchase. Then came the so-called Shakespeare First Folio. Real copies are worth millions. One sold for nearly $10 million in 2020. The seller's copy looked impressive, but Rebecca immediately noticed issues. The ink appeared too fresh, the paper didn't age correctly, and it lacked small flaws that genuine 400-year-old texts always carry. She suspected it was a fake inspired by the false folio of 1619. Even that would have had some value, but this wasn't even close. Her sharp instincts saved the shop from losing thousands. Rebecca Romney and the Book That Shook Science.
I was just looking at a book with Rick, and another one came in. It was just perfect timing.
Sometimes the books crossing her path weren't fakes or copies. They were the real deal. One unforgettable moment came when a first edition of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species landed in the shop. Published on November 24, 1859. The book's entire print run of 1,250 copies sold out instantly. Rebecca inspected the green cloth binding, the familiar diagrams, and the June 1859 advertisements tucked inside. With confidence, she declared it genuine and set its value at $75,000. Darwin's work didn't just shift science, it rattled religion and philosophy in ways even Copernicus or Newton never managed. Some annotated copies have fetched more than $500,000, while later editions pale in comparison. For instance, the 1862 edition, where Darwin removed his odd whale bear example, sits closer to $9,500. But that very first printing? It changed everything. And holding one inside the pawn shop was like touching the spark that redefined human history. Between 2011 and 2015, Rebecca became a fan favorite. One highlight was her appraisal of a first edition Frankenstein. Valued at $20,000, the book ignited online forums and boosted her growing reputation. Fans began calling her the Book Whisperer, and her popularity soared into the tens of thousands on social media. People begged producers for more of her screen time. Some even dreamed of a spin-off series dedicated just to her. Yet trouble brewed in 2014. An episode aired featuring what seemed to be an 1841 edition of the Book of Mormon. Rebecca assessed it at $40,000. The seller demanded $100,000, but after negotiations, Rick bought it for $24,000. What looked like a clever deal soon turned into a problem. Rumors spread that the volume had been stolen from the Marriott Library at the University of Utah. According to whispers, the FBI got involved, seized the book, and left the shop with nothing. No official word was ever given, but the chatter only grew louder across Reddit and YouTube. By late 2014, Rebecca herself was allegedly questioned by federal agents. They wanted to know how stolen texts could appear on national television without being flagged. It wasn't unprecedented. The FBI had already returned stolen works to the National Library of Sweden in 2015, and earlier, in 2005 and 2006, arrested Forbes Smiley for stealing rare maps worth millions. Rebecca was never accused of wrongdoing, but the speculation that followed cast shadows over her judgment. Then, on January 10, 2015, she appeared for the final time on Pawn Stars. Her last appraisal was of a pirate book from 1734, which she valued at $1,000. Rick, as always, haggled it down to $400, and then she was gone. No farewell, no announcement, just silence. Fans filled forums with questions. Was she fired? Did the scandal push her out? Or had something personal happened? Theories flew, especially as the show itself faced growing criticism over staged deals and exaggerated appraisals. Still, there was one detail that kept fans curious. Despite her disappearance, Rebecca never removed Pawn Stars from her LinkedIn profile. Even now, she lists herself as their rare book specialist from 2011 to present. Some say it's just branding. Others believe a non-disclosure agreement keeps her tethered to the name. Either way, her digital footprint maintains the connection. In 2016, she relocated to Philadelphia, officially promoted to senior director at Bauman Rare Books. She left Las Vegas behind, took charge of acquisitions and catalogs, and later worked in Brooklyn before settling in Washington, D.C. There, she co-founded a new firm. On paper, her exit was simply career advancement, but the timing so soon after the Book of Mormon scandal left fans questioning whether more was going on. Years later, in 2022, she briefly returned. On Pawn Stars Do America, filmed in Washington, D.C., she appraised another pirate book. The banter with Chumley and Corey was unchanged, making her absence feel even stranger. Meanwhile, her personal life moved forward. In 2016, she married J.P. Romney, a writer and researcher distantly related to Mitt Romney, the 2012 presidential candidate. That tie connected Rebecca, however loosely, to a powerful American political family that also included George Romney, Michigan's governor during the 1960s. But Rebecca has always kept that connection at arm's length, admitting she's never met Mitt. By 2023, the marriage ended, but during their time together, the pair collaborated creatively. In March 2017, they co-wrote Printer's Error, Irreverent Stories from Book History. At 368 pages, it combined Rebecca's expertise with JP's flair for storytelling. The book explored everything from forged Galileo editions to Charles Dickens's battles over copyright, even the curious mystery of the Gutenberg Bible, printed in 1455 but never actually naming Gutenberg. Only 48 copies survive today, each worth tens of millions. Critics praised the book. Sales were solid, and it gave Rebecca something few reality TV experts ever achieve: a respected literary voice. Even after their split, she kept her distance from political talk. In interviews, she brushed off questions about fame and family ties, focusing instead on her work. She mentioned having 2 children, but left out names and ages, choosing privacy. She edited the science fiction anthology Projections in 2020, keeping the spotlight firmly on her craft rather than her personal life. For many, the silence seemed deliberate, a way to avoid political baggage in a profession where collectors come from every possible background. Rebecca didn't just leave television, she left with ambition. In 2019, she co-founded Type Punch Matrix in Silver Spring, Maryland, with Brian Cassidy. Far from being a quaint bookshop, it became a heavyweight in the rare book world, selling Shakespeare folios, Gutenberg leaves, and radical titles worth hundreds of thousands, even millions. In a field dominated by older men, Rebecca's presence was bold and disruptive. Her push for change didn't stop there. In 2017, she and Heather O'Donnell created the Honey and Wax Book Collecting Prize, $1,000 annually for women under 30 who built the most original, creative book collections. Price tags didn't matter. Meaning did. Winners ranged from a tattoo artist with botanical works to a national security analyst with a military collection. Backed by Biblio and Christie's, the award gave visibility and confidence to young women in a field where they often felt sidelined. By 2025, it had honored 9 winners and inspired countless more to proudly call themselves collectors. A turning point in 2025.
It's because it kind of shows the history of printing, how things would have been sold at this time.
That year brought another dramatic turn. On February 18, 2025, Rebecca unveiled Jane Austen's bookshelf. It wasn't presented as just a new release. It landed like a shockwave in literary circles. In its pages, she confronted what she called the Great Forgetting, the quiet erasure of women writers who once filled the shelves Austen herself had read. Frances Burney, Anne Radcliffe, Charlotte Smith. These names had once commanded audiences of thousands, their novels selling in impressive print runs. Yet today, most of their works can't be found in print. Rebecca dug in with numbers. Only 10 to 15% of 18th century novels by women still survive, compared to roughly 40% written by men. She didn't simply state the loss. She documented it, book by book, statistic by statistic. Readers couldn't look away. The critics echoed the shock. The New York Times called the work fearless and sharp. The Washington Post said it was exhilarating, while The Guardian described it as instinctive and electric. Within only weeks, more than 20,000 copies had sold. But the revelation that unsettled people most came from Rebecca herself. She admitted she had never been introduced to many of these authors. Not during her studies, not even in her years as a rare book dealer. She had read the men, Fielding, Richardson, but never Charlotte Lennox or Maria Edgeworth, despite the fact Austen had. That realization shook her deeply. If someone in her position had missed them, how many others had too? Her answer was action. Back in 2015, she began seeking out the original works of these overlooked women. She tracked down Burney's Evelina from 1778, Radcliffe's The Mysteries of Udolpho from 1794, Charlotte Smith's Emmeline from 1788. Each discovery was a battle. Many were dismissed as sentimental or frivolous, and more were simply lost. She traveled for auctions, combed through estates, and once locked horns in a bidding war for a 1759 edition of Charlotte Lennox's The Female Quixote. By the time 2025 arrived, she had gathered over 50 rare volumes, each one a voice pulled back from silence. Collecting was only the first step. Rebecca turned those volumes into data points. She mapped their print histories, compared their survival rates, examined the critics' treatment. Again and again, the evidence pointed one way. Books by women were less likely to endure, reappear in new editions, or earn a place in classrooms. Radcliffe had inspired Poe, Shelley, and the whole Gothic tradition, yet her novels slipped out of the canon. Burney had sold 3,000 copies in her lifetime, but by 1850, she was largely gone from public memory. Smith had shaped Wordsworth's poetic voice, yet she too was nearly forgotten. Rebecca showed that this wasn't only about bias in reviews. It was bias baked into the very survival of literature. Her personal journey into this world didn't begin in an archive. It began beneath the neon glow of a Las Vegas pawn shop, where she first appeared as a rare book expert on television. That unlikely stage carried her into the inner rooms of American bibliophilia, One of the highest points came when the Grolier Club of New York, the oldest and most exclusive society of collectors, founded in 1884, invited her into their circle. With only 825 members worldwide, it was a rare honor. In May 2025, she would stand there to deliver a lecture titled Jane Austen's Bookshelf, Collecting as Investigation. That talk traced its roots back to a discovery in 2023, when she came across a Victorian edition of Burney's Evelina. That single book pushed her into a larger mission, uncovering the women who shaped Austen, then were erased from the canon. She wasn't just recounting history, she was actively rewriting its boundaries. Since 2015, Rebecca had also become a guiding force at the antiquarian book seminars. Each year, more than 100 aspiring dealers learned under her. She told them what others didn't, that the rare book trade wasn't free of deception. She spoke of Thomas J. Wise, whose forgeries of the 1930s, more than 50 false first editions, fooled the entire industry for decades. She used stories like these to show collecting was never simply about ownership. It was about unveiling hidden stories. She taught them that Burney's Evelina, published in 1778 in a print run of 500, laid groundwork for Pride and Prejudice. Thanks to her, forgotten influences could be seen again. But she wasn't content with just history. In 2019, Rebecca co-founded Type Punch Matrix, aiming to push rare books into the future. By 2023, she was testing AI and blockchain authentication, first with a $50,000 Sylvia Plath manuscript that could be traced back to 1956. The drive came from her earlier book, Printer's Error, in 2017, where she studied the forged Gutenberg Bibles of the 1840s. By 2022, she was working with technologists on scanners that analyzed ink spectrally and spotted fakes with 95% accuracy, beyond human vision. In 2024, one such tool exposed a forged Columbus letter from 1493. She didn't guard these methods, she taught them. Over 200 dealers learned the tools in just 1 year. She even experimented with VR handling of rare books, letting students turn pages virtually while originals stayed safe. For her, this was not only preservation, it was a transformation of the field, and the reach kept expanding. By 2025, Type Punch Matrix was evolving into museum consulting. What began in 2019 as a $100,000 startup had grown into an operation that had appraised more than 1,000 rare objects valued above $10 million. The list included a 16th century manuscript at the Boston Book Fair in 2023 and the lightning-fast Lilly Library acquisition in 2023-2022. 2,000 romance novels for $250,000, closed in only 16 hours. These weren't just business records. They carried a message. Overlooked voices deserved a place in major institutions. In 2024, she helped design an exhibit of 18th century Black writers. Her Silver Spring, Maryland office had grown to 10 people, and projections suggested museum partnerships alone could soon bring $2 million annually. For Rebecca, the point was clear. Collecting wasn't about trophies. It was about reshaping which voices survive and ensuring they are finally remembered. And that is the real story. What began as quiet questions about forgotten writers has grown into a movement reshaping how history remembers them. Rebecca didn't just collect rare books. She uncovered voices that had been buried and proved that preservation can be an act of justice. If you found this journey as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more untold stories. Until next time, thanks for watching.